The scene opens with a fight scene in a heated gunfight between a group of armed men and some kind of elite cyborg soldier. It turns out that this guy is actually an Imperial guard. He reveals that everything he is doing is for the Empire to get rid of the enemies who pose a threat to the Emperor and the Empire's people. The gunmen start to shoot at him, and as they unleash a rain of bullets on the red-eyed soldier, he just stands there and admits that there is no other reason for the existence of the Imperial Guard. The massive bullets speed toward him like small missiles, but just when they're about to hit him, he opens fire on the men and wipes them all out with a single wave of bullets. In the blink of an eye, all the men are down, and all that we see left are their corpses lying in a pool of blood and his gun smoking. After he takes out the threat, someone comes out of the shadows to give the Imperial Guard a round of applause. As we can already tell, this is a futuristic world, and in this Earth of the future, technology has developed significantly. However, this did not mean hope for humanity. Due to the unending war caused by lack of resources, the Earth continued to be destroyed, and as a result, humanity kept expanding into other planets. In the end, life on Earth ended due to an invasion of unknown alien species. However, the survivors of humanity wandered through space and ended up finding a planet similar to Earth after a long journey. Because of this, humanity decided to call this new planet. They called this place Novice, which basically means new home. They sent out the coordinates of this new home to all of space. With this, all humans who had been scattered throughout space began gathering at Novus. Just like life was on Earth, humans also created different nations and empires on this new planet. There's the Balado Federation, where countless alien species are mixed amongst the Earthlings. The Accretion Empire was also created, and this is a place that possesses a powerful army of soldiers with machinated physiques, pretty similar to what we saw in the first scene. Then, there's the Holy Korite Alliance, with priests who possess force energy as well as mental fortitude. Sure, the humans were able to find a new home on Novus, and it all started out pretty okay, but it didn't take long for the same issues faced on Earth to catch up with them again. As you can imagine, there were finite resources even on Novus, and as a result, the humans once again saw themselves preparing for another world war, each nation desperate to acquire total control of the resources available on the planet. The story officially begins in the city of Accretia, in the machination lab of the Accretion Empire. An Imperial guard like the one from earlier enters the lab to meet up with some other soldiers, and the boss immediately tells him that he's up next to something. The bearded guy with a crazy look on his face claims that the guards have bad luck and informs them that they are going to be subject to a lot of comparisons. The scar-faced guy claims that this is where the guard is supposed to show the Emperor what he's capable of. That being said, he warns him not to forget that this is a very important day for trainees. This bearded guy is Hamilas Castoria, the Accretia Imperial Guard commander. Hearing what the commander just said, one of the other Imperial Guard trainees in the lab boldly states that they'll soon find out who the unlucky one really is. Commander Hamilas Castoria is taken aback when he hears that the young trainee's name is Luca, because apparently, the name is a big deal in the Empire, and the scar-faced man hopes that he lives up to the expectations. In response, the spiky-haired trainee claims that he will do just that. Like all the other trainees in the room, Luca gets ready for the contest ahead. He wears his helmet, thinking about how he needs to be at least capable of dodging and blocking bullets. After all, it's a necessary skill in order to become an official part of the Imperial Guards. At this point, you can tell that Luca is our protagonist in this story. The young trainee has completed all the simulation training in the most extreme situations. As far as he's concerned, he's a soldier training and training of the Imperial Guards with heightened spatial awareness thanks to the senses and perception reinforcement procedure. With this in mind, Luca pumps himself up for the challenge ahead. He sits up completely and enters the room to take out the threats and prove that he deserves to be an Imperial Guard. Right now, his opponents are 5 death row inmates with cheap cybernetic equipment. Even though these guys are hardened criminals who would fight to the death with everything they've got, our boy is still certain that the fight would be a piece of cake. As far as he's concerned, this whole test will take him only 10 seconds at most. The criminals charge him with their weapons and he casually braces himself for their attacks. The first guy at the front takes out a Jin and tries to shoot Luca, but before he even knows what's happening, the Imperial Guard in training effortlessly takes the guy's head off with a single slash. He decapitates the guy and then proceeds to finish the other criminals, who are absolutely horrified by what just happened. They're all scared shitless after seeing him literally take off someone's head. As much as Luca knows that this is a really easy win for him, he also remembers that this is an opportunity for him to make a good impression on the Emperor. Luca knows that he needs to do something absolutely noteworthy, but the quest now is whether he will be able to do that. As far as he knows, he's never done it before, so now it seems almost impossible, but he just has to make it happen here and now. All of the terrified criminals brace themselves for a fight to the death, and Luca does the same, determined to wipe them out and earn his place in the Imperial Guard. He knows that he needs to heighten his senses to the maximum. Our boy goes into beast mode and annihilates the opponents in a brutal display of ruthlessness and power. The commander can't help but smile when he sees just how amazing Luca is. After a few seconds, all the criminals are down and lying in a huge pool of blood. He finishes them off with ease, and by the time he's done, you can tell from the look on his face just how much energy has had to be used. He catches his breath as blood drips down from his nose, and even though his body got some real damage, he's very glad because he finally did it. He finally surpassed his limits, and now he's confident that it should be enough to raise his value in the eyes of the commander and the rest of the empire. After his test, he walks back to the commander feeling really proud of himself, and the scar-faced man is truly blown away by his display. The man didn't think Luca would use ballistic trajectory control to take out the enemies because it's a skill that shouldn't even be in the curriculum yet. In response, our boy simply states that he just copied the guy that went before him. Hearing this, the commander informs him that the guy he's talking about was from a renowned household and that he was already taught the curriculum in advance. The scar-faced man proceeds to remind Luca that the guy is different from him, who's from an orphanage. Of course, this is not the kind of compliment Luca expected after putting on a show for the commander, so he just turns to look at the man, feeling pretty offended. At this point, the comma admits that he likes our boy and promises to give him a gift. Luca is taken aback when he hears this because he didn't expect that from the hardened commander. He turns around wondering what gift the man is talking about, and then in a shocking twist, the man reaches for his face and grabs a hold of our boy's eye. The other trainees are horrified when they see what's going on, but the spiky-haired boy doesn't even flinch as the crazy commander takes out his eye from the socket. Blood gushes out instantly, but still, Luca doesn't even react. After taking out the boy's eye, the commander squishes it, feeling very impressed. He can tell that Luca must have done great on his pain tolerance training. I mean, there were so many other ways to test the boy's pain tolerance without making him half-blind. But I guess this is how stuff like this works in the Accretion Empire. Anyway, after crushing the boy's eye, the man once again admits that he likes him, and Luca just responds by stating how glad he is to hear this. Apparently, our boy doesn't even mind that his eye was just destroyed because he would have gotten rid of it eventually since it's not good enough for him. It turns out that he's been wanting an eye that has the feature to predict trajectories, so now that the commander has helped him with the first step, he bluntly requests the better eye that he desires. This is a really weird mindset to have, and some of the other trainees are even overwhelmed by how extreme Luca is, but the aspiring Imperial Guard finds it to be completely normal. Later, we're introduced to another trainee, number 12, named Lilian. The blondie claims that he wanted to talk to Luca, who happens to be trainee number 32. Lilian just came out of nowhere and stood by our boy's door, so Luca is taken aback when he sees a stranger there talking to him. He's stunned for a second, and Lilian quickly realizes how awkward the atmosphere is. He gets nervous too and immediately apologizes, admitting that his approach was way too sudden. Luca figures that the guy is just nervous, so he tells Lilian that he can come in, so the blondie does just that. Once they're both in the room, Lilian tells Luca that he was really good back there and admits that he was really impressed by his display. Most people will be excited to receive a compliment, but our boy is clearly not in the mood for that. He bluntly tells Lilian that he's in the wrong place if he's wishing to exchange praises, and then proceeds to call the blondie young master. It turns out that this visitor also comes from a pretty powerful family. Just from his aura, our boy can tell that Lilian Karthika is the son of the famous noble household Karthika. Hearing this, the blondie just laughs, and concludes that becoming Luca a friend is going to be a lot more difficult than he thought. Logically speaking, our boy knows that there's no need for him to be so aggressive to someone from a noble household. Luca figures that he's just being mean because he's envious of the blonde-haired boy, but besides that, he's not exactly in the mood to talk, so the bottom line is that he's just tired for now. Lilian is disappointed by the first response he gets, but he's still determined to make the talented one-eyed fella his friend, so he comes up with another approach. All of a sudden, Lilian takes out a blue pill and offers it to Luca, leaving our boy stunned. Lilian claims that this is what he came to give him, revealing that the pill will decrease his sensitivity to enable him to rest better. Even though Luca knows how helpful the pill might be to him, he's not in any hurry to be indebted to the noble boy, so he immediately rejects it, stating that he does need the pill. Lilian tries to insist, informing him that he won't be able to train properly in the morning if he doesn't get a good rest overnight. He feels that Luca should know that mental fortitude can't carry him through everything. After a little persuasion, our boy finally gives in and takes the blue pill from the rich kid. He's reluctant to put it in his mouth because he's still trying to inspect it. The moment he holds the pill, he can tell that it's different from the knockoffs that are being made and sold in the streets. He doesn't let the noble boy know this though. At this point, he figures that it would hurt to be nice to the boy too. So, he tells Ile that he was also pretty good earlier, and admits that he even copied his techniques. Hearing this, the blondie reveals that he actually has a mechanical eye for combat, explaining that it's not hard for him to calculate trajectory. As such, he couldn't help but be blown away when Luca copied him flawlessly. As far as he's concerned, our boy's actions were much more impressive since he pulled them off with nothing but his instincts. Ile could also see that the commander even took notice of Luca during his display, which is something that does usually happen. He feels that the commander really took an interest in Luca and suggests that it's the reason why the man is giving him a mechanical eye out of his own pocket. After hearing all of this, our boy simply waves off the praise and claims that all he did was work really hard through the training. After all, nobility is excellence while the lower classes are powerless. Or at least, that's the way life is in the Accretion Empire. Luca is very much aware of his background and what it means to even be in the position he has right now. He has a shot at becoming a valuable asset to the Empire and being a lower-class citizen. He knows very well that he can't let go of a rare opportunity like this. Ile is just speechless after listening to the one-eyed boy speak. He can understand what Luca means by this because he's familiar with the privileges of being a noble and he's seen the unfair firsthand. With this in mind, he suggests that there were people who paid money to manipulate the results of the selection exams. He's sure that Luca passed it after seeing what the boy is capable of, but he also believes that there are people here with them now who failed and aren't even supposed to be at this stage. Our boy is pretty shocked when he hears this because he didn't even think it was possible for the results to be manipulated. In response, the blondie admits that there's no proof. But still, this is something that he strongly believes and he's not afraid to admit it. Ile tells Luca that people like him without any support system have never failed the advanced soldier cultivation process, and he believes that this is how such people made it that far with their skills. After listening to Ile say such sketchy things about the elite, our boy is really surprised because he never imagined that he'd hear a noble tell him that all nobles are not excellent. Our one-eyed hero never considered the possibility of foul play in the selections, so this makes him wonder exactly what Ile is trying to tell him. He's still trying to wrap his head around what's going on and why this conversation is happening when all of a sudden, the noble boy stretches out his hand. He calls out to Luca and shows his the hand, urging him to shake it. Ile thinks that people like Luca are the ones meant to succeed, and so he makes this clear before stating that he'll be cheering him until the end. At first, our boy is taken aback by this gesture, but so far, he has not seen anything to make him not trust the blondie, so he shakes his hand and admits that he's planning on being here till the end. After all, everything they're doing here is all for the Empire, and even though Luca looks terrifyingly determined to succeed, Ile just looks worried. This whole story follows the chronicles of a boy being raised as a military weapon in the tyrannical empire, Accretion. The story continues in a shooting range where the trainees are all basic at testing their accuracy with guns. Our boy is training right next to Ile, suggesting that he and the noble boy have become pretty close lately. We also see that he's gotten rid of the eye patch and is now sporting a very impressive bionic eye that's glowing actively as he prepares to take his shot. It's no surprise that the mechanical eye looks this cool since the commander personally sourced it for Luca. I guess losing his human eye wasn't such a bad thing after all, because now he's about to become the most formidable shooter around. He activates the eye, and it begins to calculate the trajectory so that he can take the perfect shot. Our boy aims at the target, and as soon as the eye locks in, he pulls the trigger and unleashes the bullet. Shortly after the shooting practice is over, Ile takes a peek to see what Luca has been up to, and he's blown away when he sees how accurate the boy was. It turns out that Luca managed to shoot all the targets square in the head without missing a single shot. Seeing this, he begins to understand that the top student really is a different breed. Of course, our boy doesn't even say anything in response because he's not even sure what to say. He just remains silent and lets the noble boy do all the talking. Ile is really impressed with Luca's rapid progress and wonders if he's already getting used to the right eye that he transplanted recently. It's a really massive upgrade as far as the blondie is concerned, so he jokes about it being unfair that Luca is now this good with a gun too when he specializes in close combat. At this point, our boy finally responds, explaining that it's only natural that members of the guards are good with all types of weapons. Besides that, Luca also makes it clear that he does appreciate being patronized by the actual top student when it comes to shooting. It turns out that Ile was absolutely perfect during practice and somehow managed to shoot the target's head through the exact same hole without missing even once. The fact that he is this good and is still going on and on about Luca's shooting skills makes our boy a little offended because it's almost like he's messing with him. After Luca calls Ile out for being cheeky, the blondie laughs nervously and admits that shooting is actually his specialty. Leo can literally see the overconfidence oozing out of Ile's body, so he tells the blondie that he's going to surpass him pretty soon if he keeps being so nonchalant. In response, the noble boy simply states that he'll welcome such a possibility if it comes, and then reminds Luca that he meant what he said when he said he'll always be rooting for him. He goes on about how the Empire needs people like our boy, but the kid can't help but feel like Ile is just trying to mess with him. The blondie claims that the value of ability and talent is being diluted in the Empire, and states that even the powerless can be called talented in this era as long as they have status and power. However, Ile believes that things will be better if more naturally talented irregulars start to appear. The blondie feels that this is the only way that folks will be able to tell between those who are talented and those who aren't. Sure, the blondie has a point, but it does look like our boy appreciates his theory too much. To Luca, it sounds like Ile is criticizing the Empire's system, so he tells the noble boy exactly what he's thinking. He calls Ile out and reminds him that he won't be able to get away with it if he gets reported for what he just said. The consequences would be severe, and it wouldn't even matter if he is a Karthika because the Empire headquarters might consider the boy's theory to be treason. At first, it looks like Ile is shocked by Luca's subtle threat, but then all of a sudden, the noble boy cracks a smile because he knows that the guy is only trying to scare him. If Luca was really going to report him, he wouldn't even have said it, so Ile is certain that he won't say anything because he already knows that Luca is a good person. Either way, he thanks Luca for even worrying about him and nonchalantly walks away, feeling untouchable. Meanwhile, our boy watches the guy stroll away confidently, and it just pisses him off because he knows that Ile is right. He was never going to rat the noble boy out, so it's just annoying that the kid saw right through him without even trying. The story fast forwards 2 years into the future. It's the third quarter of the year right now, and it looks like the Imperial Guards are becoming really experienced. They're currently in transit, headed for their next mission. In one of the trucks, the commander lays down the instructions for the mission. For this training, he decides that Ile and Luca will act as platoon leaders, and as usual, he's very rigid about his instructions. He literally states that those who have a problem with his selections are free to get up and leave immediately. Of course, none of them dares to protest his decision, so he proceeds to state the instructions for this training mission. As usual, Ile looks really excited about the mission and is really anticipating some field action. On the other hand, Luca just looks absolutely locked in and ready to ace this test. Across the gorge not too far from them, there's a Korite outpost illegally stationed in their territory, so the commander tells them about it and makes it clear to them that this mission is to test their abilities on the field. That being said, the scary man reminds them that they have no need for prisoners. In other words, their mission is to kill every last enemy. After briefing them on what to do, they arrive on a cliff just above the outpost. The trainees get off and our boy takes the lead with his fellow platoon leader. Ile points out how this is their first real mission, and Luca simply wonders why he's saying the obvious. He asks the noble boy if he's nervous because he shouldn't be, since he's already killed in previous training sessions. Sure, they've executed death row criminals in the past and it should be like the same thing, but Ile is especially nervous now because this is the first time they'll actually be facing outside forces. The noble boy talks about how the Belatian Federation, the Holy Korite Alliance, and even the Akret Empire all have planet Earth's humanity as ancestors. Hearing all of this, Luca just gets disappointed in Ile for getting all soft so quickly. So, he turns to the noble boy and reminds him that there's really no need to get lost in his emotions right now. They came here to battle and wipe out the enemy forces to defend their empire, so our boy really does care for a history lesson at this point. Luca urges his buddy to get his head back in the game and reminds him that there are several senior guards around too. Our boy knows all too well that the senior Imperial guards are not here to protect them from danger. There's an especially menacing full-body mechanical armor legion standing not too far back, and Luca knows for a fact that these guys are here to supervise with an iron fist. He feels that the senior guards might even kill them if they try to take any of the enemies prisoner. It's pretty crazy, but Luca actually agrees with this method, feeling that the idiots who aren't aware of their place do not belong in the Imperial Guard. On planet Novus, other forces are just bugs to the Empire, and our boy is convinced that everyone on the outside uses and deceives the Empire for their own gains. Ile quietly listens to Luca and even agrees with him, confirming that this was what they were taught. Just then, we see one of the targets that they have to wipe out mercilessly. Just beneath the cliff, there's a mother and child playing together. They have no idea that the Imperial guards are about to raid their outpost, the same way Luca has zero hesitation to lock in on them to begin their reign of fire. It does take too long for the Imperial forces to burn the outpost to the ground. Of course, the instruction was to kill every living thing from the Coride Alliance living in their territory, so Luca and his fellow trainees turn the place into a hellscape. Our boy walks through the fire, scanning the area for his next victims and confirms that none of the Corans are armed. Normally, this should make him feel a little sad about their actions, but they're at war, so all of his emotions have been tucked away into a vault somewhere far away along with his conscience. He gets to an area in the burning remains of the Coride outpost where he sees a little boy weeping behind a boulder. The child is hiding from the flames and the merciless Imperial guards that just showed him what war looks like. He sits there with his face in his hands and cries out for his mother, who is probably already now a burning corpse lying around somewhere. For the first time all day, Luca actually hesitates to kill one of the Corites. Seeing the innocent child sit there and weep helplessly reopens a part of him that had been locked in a while now. It starts to look like this weapon of war might actually have a conscience because he actually hesitates to kill the boy. He can see fear all over the child, just like the flames that are about to swallow him. Clearly, this boy is a non-combatant with zero resistance, so killing him in cold blood becomes extremely difficult for our hero. At the moment, he starts to wish that the boy even had a gun or shown the slightest level of being a threat because he truly does want to end his life. Unfortunately, nobody can be spared and this instruction rings constantly like in his head like a bell. The terrifying image of the commander telling them not to take any prisoners plays over and over in his mind, reminding our boy that he has to kill all the enemies. All of the training that led to this moment has taught him one thing so far, which is that he should never hesitate to eliminate a threat found in their territory. After all, they're just insects that sap up the Empire's supplies. With this in mind, Luca is given the motivation to finally take out the innocent helpless child crying out for his mother. The ruthless Imperial guard in training takes out his sword and thrusts it forcefully. He uses so much force that it drives his sword right through the thick boulder behind the boy as well, but surprisingly, he doesn't kill the child. The child can't believe it when he opens his eyes to see that he's still alive. He trembles in fear, looking absolutely confused because he's not sure what's going on right now. Just then, Luca whispers to him, telling him to pretend like he's dead. He leans over to the boy and informs him that playing dead is the only way that he'll even stand a chance of getting out of here alive. A bigger part of our boy's mind tells him that he's done the right thing, but the ruthless Imperial guard inside him keeps the feeling that he shouldn't let the child live. He is afraid of what would happen to him if headquarters were to ever find out about his actions. Heck, the senior guards might even kill him right here in the burning ruins if they catch him letting the boy go free. All of these thoughts run through Luca's mind as he walks away, but he doesn't stop walking even once. At some point, he begins to wonder if he should go back and finish the job. But before he can even turn back to see if the boy is still there, he hears a loud bang, and that's when we see the horrific reason behind the noise. The poor boy's head is blown off by the shot from another Imperial guard, and by the time Luca looks up, he's horrified to see Ile sitting at the top of a nearby tower. The blondie looks like he's been there for a while, and right now, he's shaking his head in disappointment as he holds out his smoking gun. Ile looks extremely disappointed in Luca for not finishing the job, and our boy begins to panic, wondering how long the guy has been sitting up there. Right now, our boy can already tell that the noble boy saw everything that he did. He's terrified for sure, but he quickly calms himself down because it's like he can see the reassuring look on his friend's face. He trusts Ile enough to know that the blondie won't report his hesitation, but he can't know if any other trainees saw what happened. If they did, that would be a real problem, and even though he trusts Ile, he still feels he should keep an eye on the noble boy just in case he decides to rat him out. He's still thinking about this when the noble boy is shot off the top of the towers with a powerful blast. Luca is so confused when he sees this because he didn't detect any armed threats around. But I guess this shocking twist just sums up what it means to be at war. His closest friend just got shot down, and before he can process it, the attacker responsible starts charging at him. The enemy emerges from the dust and smoke, wishing death upon all accretions, and by the time Luca turns to face him, he's shocked because the man doesn't have a weapon. It appears that he's a sorcerer, but our boy doesn't have much experience with such opponents. He still doesn't understand how the guy managed to cause an explosion without any weapons, because the only explanation for this would be very problematic for the trainees. Another of the Imperial guards tries to attack the enemy from behind, but before he can land the hit, the man casually causes the trainee to explode. At this point, Luca's fears are confirmed because now he knows for a fact that this enemy is a Force user. He begins to tremble just thinking about the fact that there was a Force user hiding in their territory. The man is furious right now because the Imperial Guard just wiped out a group of innocent people. He informs Luca that this was a settlement and not a base, explaining that the people they just killed were only doing their best to live and not trying to cause any problems. Hearing this, Luca and the remaining trainees are shocked. He wonders if the captain knew about this, feeling that Ile would have avoided the damage he just suffered if they were informed ahead of time. Just then, we see the noble boy lying in pieces in the rubble. Parts of his machinated body are scattered all over the place, and it doesn't look likely that he'll make it out of this one alive. His right arm is gone, and his lower half is currently missing, which is never a good thing in battle. Ile calls out to Luca, admitting that he let his guard down. He claims that he has no excuse and takes responsibility for his own misfortune. But Luca actually feels more responsible. For this reason, he simply tells his buddy to get some rest, because he's about to take care of this Force user. Luca blames himself for Ile's condition, feeling that his hesitation is what caused this problem. So, he's determined to avenge his friend, and that shouldn't be too hard since he has learned countless times how to deal with a Force user. Luca is ready to do whatever it takes to make up for his mistake, so he orders the remaining trainees under him to disperse and take over the base while he faces the Force user. The moment he says this, all the other Imperial guards in training spread out, leaving Luca all by himself. The Force user is pissed when they try to get away, so he attempts to stop them, but while he's acting all tough, our boy begins to realize that this guy might just be acting as bait to buy time for his allies to get away. With this in mind, Luca begins to analyze the situation and plan his mode of attack. In order for one to use force, the user needs to perform a preparatory action. In this case, his opponent's action would be the hand signs he's been using. Luca feels that he should be able to react to the explosion as long as he can see a disruption in space just in time. With this technique, he's able to see the Force user's attacks and explosions before they even happen, allowing him to dodge all of the blasts without even getting a scratch. Our boy would very much prefer a battle of attrition, but there's no other choice right now. Even though there's a chance of his body collapsing from maintaining such a high-speed maneuver, he's determined to take the risk, knowing that he needs to attack while he's in this state. With this in mind, our boy goes even faster until he's way too fast to the opponent to even see him. In this state, he drives his sword into the enemy's body, and just like this, it looks as though the fight is over. Luca is convinced that he finally got the guy, but he quickly learns that it's not over when the Force user pumps him with an incredible surge of electricity. The power from the shock is so mighty that it shatters our boy's helmet and literally starts to destroy his body. His eyes widen in horror as the reality dawns on him. His life flashes before his eyes as it becomes clear that death is about to take him. Just when it looks like he's about to be killed by the shock, the Force user sees his face and ceases the attack. The old man weeps when he sees that the Imperial guard behind the mask is just a child, and in this brief moment of vulnerability, Luca finishes him off. Usually, he would feel accomplished after defeating such an opponent, but this time, he just feels fear and confusion. He knows that he would have died if the Force user had gone through with his attack. From what they've been taught, Coride is made up of fanatics that are beyond human comprehension, so he can't help but wonder why this man failed to kill him even after what he did to their settlement. While our boy is still trying to make sense of what just happened, the teachings of the Imperial Guard ring in his head once again, telling him to keep moving and not let his emotions consume him during battle. After all, this is all for the Empire, to kill those who threaten the safety of the Emperor, and the people of the Empire is the reason for the Imperial Guard's existence. At this point, Luke looks around him and sees the destruction they left in their wake. The settlement from a few moments ago is now a terrifying hellscape filled with the screams of their victims. For the first time, this young Imperial Guard is almost even terrified of himself, but I guess he can't let his emotions distract him now. The Imperial Guard's purpose is to kill for the Accretion Empire. This is what they were trained for. This is what they were made for. Nothing else matters. The scene shifts and the story catches up in the Accretion Hospital recovery room where the trainees have been since returning from their mission. Luca is currently in one of the recovery pods, and unsurprisingly, he's right next to his buddy Ile, who miraculously survived. The funny noble asks Luca how it feels to almost die, but our boy simply tells him to speak for himself since he's the one who was literally blown to pieces on the battlefield. Of course, the Joker knows this, but I guess he's just trying to lighten up the mood by laughing over his misfortune. Ilay reveals that he got new arms and legs, then asks Luca how many of his body parts were changed. In response, our boy reveals that his back was broken, so he got titanium bones and artificial skin as replacements. He doesn't seem to mind though, since in this line of work, he's likely going to end up with a completely different body in a couple of years anyway. That being the case, he figures that it wouldn't hurt to get them a little earlier. Ilay feels that the commander probably knew that there was a force user in the outpost, and feels that he didn't inform them because he was trying to test them. Luca agrees with him, suggesting that the senior guards didn't intervene because they figured the trainees could handle it. Thankfully, nobody was killed in action, but Ilay finds this weird because he doesn't get how he and the other cadet who got blasted with the force attack head-on survived. He feels that it's a little too odd to be a coincidence and suggests that the force user didn't intend to kill them from the start. Hearing this, Luca's mind instantly flashes back to the man's last words. He was so shocked to see that he was just a child, and even though deep down, he was touched by the man's mercy, he feels that it was a mistake to let him live. As far as Luca is concerned, he's already a warrior, a soldier in fact, and he tries to convince himself that such pathetic mercy is the reason why the Korean will continue to die out. Our boy goes into a literal villain mode for a second there, but then he's suddenly drawn back to reality when Ilay asks him why he spared the Korean child. From the look on the noble boy's face, you can tell that he's asking from a place of concern, but Lucy quickly snaps at him for talking too much, wondering if he got a new tongue too. For what it's worth, he claims that he made a mistake and vows that it will never happen again. Later, the trainees are addressed by a superior who informs them that they've now completed 2 years of the 4-year Imperial Guard training. He also informs them that there are now younger batches and urges them to be models for the new recruits. And he's particularly talking to Luca and Ilay since they're the top students. He tells the two that they can aim to be centurions as well and encourages them to keep up the good work for the glory of the Emperor and his citizens. Ilay acknowledges the advice, but Luca is still stuck on the centurion part. You see, the Imperial Guard is organized quite simply. There are 1,000 guardsmen, consisting of 10 centuries, all commanded by a chief centurion. The commander of the guards, the chief centurion, is also the centurion of the 1st century. And cadets like our boy, after finishing a full-body mechanization, are assigned to the lowest-ranking century, the 10th century. With all of this in mind, Luca can't help but dream of becoming the centurion of the 10th century because that way, he can make it big. Later, Ilay and Luca engage in a sparring session to test out their new body parts, and as the combative exchange goes on, our boy can tell that the blondie got stronger with his new arm. Unfortunately, he still has weaknesses, and Luca doesn't hesitate to exploit them and bring the session to an end. With this, our boy has now successfully beaten his friend 124 times in 124 rounds. Ilay really thought he was finally going to win this time, but our boy reminds him of the true importance of training, stating that there's more to getting stronger than just getting new parts. The noble boy noticed a change in his friend, claiming that Luca had become even more rigid since that speech. He figures that the whole centurion fixation seems to have impacted the ambitious young guard. Our boy doesn't even deny it, stating that he'd be accepted anywhere if he can garner enough experience serving as an Imperial Guard. On the other hand, Ilay feels that Luca is already in a position where his birth no longer matters and suggests that he relax a little. In response, our boy reminds him that he's not a noble who has somewhere to return to if things in the Imperial Guard don't work out. Luca believes that he needs to keep climbing or else it will be all over for him. At this point, he calls Ilay out for lacking drive despite being talented and asks him why he even wants to be a guardsman. At first, the blondie tries to joke about it but eventually reveals that he wanted to be a scholar, an archaeologist to study the ancient arcane civilization. Hearing this, Luca asks why he doesn't just go do that instead, so the noble boy reveals that it's banned in the Empire. Besides that, his family has a history of producing many generals, so they'd never let him do anything. Just then, Luca accuses Ilay of being spoiled for being sad that he can't do what he wants. He tells the noble boy about the countless people in the slums who aren't guaranteed the next day, and most are deeply thankful whenever they get something to eat. Hearing Luca's response, Ilay isn't too surprised because he already knows how one-minded his friend is. He's disappointed though, because he just told the guy a secret and got scolded in return. Unfortunately, our emotional tyrant of a protagonist still doesn't care about his feelings. He simply informs him that his secret is like criticism of the Empire, and that he'll be ruined if someone reports it. The blondie isn't too bothered, knowing that Lucas won't report him because he kept his secret. At this point, our boy claims that he only hesitated because his opponent was a non-combatant, stating that he'd still have gone back to finish off the child. Once again, Luca declares his loyalty to the Empire and the Emperor for seeing his talents. He states that the enemies of the Empire are his enemies as well, and then reminds Ile that he's not an exception. For some reason, the blondie has this trying conviction that Luca isn't the cold-hearted killing machine he also claims to be. He calls our boy a liar and then jumps down from the platform, stating that Luca would have tried to kill him already if his allegiance to the Empire truly surpassed simple loyalty. That being said, he casually walks away and once again tells Luca not to push himself too hard to impress the Empire. Our boy knows that Ile is right, so he's even more pissed at the idiot, feeling that the boy might just end up dead if he keeps taunting him so much. By the third year, the trainees are given another mission. This time, it's a reconnaissance. They're sent to an uninhabited neutral zone, and there, Ile comes across an arcane site, and he's so excited to get an energy response despite it being millions of years old. He thinks it's so cool that there were civilizations that explored the stars before humans even existed, but Luca isn't exactly interested. He's drawn a line, but his blondie friend doesn't ever hesitate to cross it to piss him off. The noble boy literally starts caressing the structure, so Luca warns him not to get careless. This reconnaissance is part of their training, and if they meet another force while out here, it's going to be a fight. Unfortunately, Ile doesn't look like he plans to take anything other than arcane sites seriously right now, which just pisses Luca off even more. Just then, someone at the back chimes in, talking about how the present exists because of the past. He claims that the records allow them to predict the future, and judging by the fella's tone, Luca immediately figures that he's a historical nerd just like Ile. This trainee is Claude Ramonis, and it doesn't take long before our boy starts shooting death glares at him. His family isn't as big as the Karthikas, but it's still very respected. Claude suddenly asks Luca if he's seeing anyone, and our boy instantly cocks his fists, ready to punch in the guy's face if he takes a step closer. Claude understands his worry and reveals that he was only asking because he wants to match him with his little sister. Luca simply responds by stating that he's from an orphanage, but Claude doesn't care about that because he's sure that Luca will be his superior one day. He wants Luca to date his sister so he can be on the guy's good side one day. At the same time, Ile teases our boy about how popular he has become, but the fun and jokes come to an end when they sense a biological response not too far away. They all suit up in a flash and go into stealth mode. Luca decides that Ile's group will take cover and support from the rear while him and Claude stay in front. Right now, they don't know what they're up against, but they can tell that it's not going to be an easy opponent. They hide behind trees and watch carefully to see what forces they just detected, and after a while, they're horrified to learn that it's a Korite paladin. This huge silver knight is apparently a deadly opponent because the moment he spots the trainees, Luca tells him men to run for their lives. They attempt to escape, but before they can get far, the Korite paladin launches an attack which takes Claude out in the blink of an eye. Luca is horrified when he sees this because it all happens so fast, and to make matters worse, this formidable opponent is just getting started with them. All of a sudden, a bright spear, leader with power, shoots out of the arcane structure and speeds over to the paladin's hand. Our boy watches as the glowing pointy projectile flies to the powerful Korite knight. He just stares at it helplessly, knowing that he can't do anything to stop it. At this point, all he can think about is the poor white-haired boy who just lost his life. The image of Claude talking about his little sister plays back in Luca's mind. The boy was just talking about how he wanted to introduce his sister to our boy if he didn't have any woman in mind. Luca stands there frozen in horror after what just happened. He thought that he saw the spear glow coming, but right now, Claude's upper body is literally gone. As you can imagine, he begins to panic because one of his teammates is lying dead right in front of him. Desperate to figure a way out of this tricky situation, he attempts to use his mechanical eye to find the solution, but he's just bombarded with error messages. Seeing this, he starts to panic even more because he's basically cooked if the paladin strikes again. He starts sweating profusely as he struggles to make his mechanical eye work because he desperately needs to calculate the trajectory of the spear no matter what. Luca is so confused at this point and literally freezes in fear. He's drawn back to reality when someone shoots at the Korite knight with a gun. Of course, a single bullet isn't enough to penetrate the knight's defense, so it just bounces off the shield barrier. The noise helps Luca snap out of his dazed state, but he is still very overwhelmed by the situation at hand. Ile encourages him to fight and stall time long enough for the senior Imperial guards to come and help them. Hearing Ile's voice, our boy pulls himself together because he knows that the blondie is absolutely right. Even if he tries to run away, He won't be able to escape this situation, so he figures that there's only one way to tackle it. The only way out is to fight until the Imperial Guard gets here. With this in mind, Luca takes out his red sword and activates it to get into battle mode. Our boy starts a mental timer, feeling that they just need to hold off the Korite Paladin for a dozen seconds or so. Luca is sure that the Imperial Guard member who was watching will get here in no time. Unfortunately, the opponent they're facing is so strong that the Imperial Guard would need to arrive immediately if they want to survive. At just over 1 second, the Korite Paladin launches the blazing spear at him, and in just over 2 seconds, the spear reaches our boy and blasts right through his helmet. The spear slices the side of his face, just missing his eye, and before he can process what the hell just happened, the overpowered knight loads up his fists and lands a powerful blow on our boy's face. He sees the supercharged punch coming straight to his face, but all he can do is watch. Luca's life flashes right before his eyes, and all he can think about is death. He begins to wonder if he's going to die. At the moment, he feels that there's no way he can survive a fight against this monster for a dozen seconds. Luca has literally given up at this point, and that's when he hears the commander speaking to him. The man tells him that he looks like a pig that has realized it's going to be mauled in the slaughterhouse. In this vision, the commander promises to put bullets in their heads if he turns his back on the enemy. He hears the man telling him to swing his blade just like the enemy rather than just standing there, reminding him that there's no need for weaklings in the Imperial Guard. As soon as the vision ends, our boy gets his head back in the game. So far, he's been fighting the Korite Paladin for just 3 seconds, but he's also taken a good deal of damage. Still, he can't give up now, so he decides to attack the knight first before he starts moving again. With this in mind, our boy charges at the knight and a huge explosion erupts as they collide. His comrades watch in horror as the smoke fills this air. The shockwaves send our boy flying, and he even loses his sword in the process. All of this happens just after 5 seconds, and by the 6th second, he realizes that he now has a big problem. It turns out that the force from his clash left him with even more damage, and now he can no longer use his hand anymore. The fight just got even tougher now, but he can't give up. He has to hold off the powerful knight long enough for the Imperial Guard to arrive. Unfortunately, the Korite Paladin doesn't seem to have a scratch anywhere on his body. In fact, the knight looks like he can keep fighting all day. The Korite Paladin is literally overpowered right now, and so it unleashes another large-scale attack. Luca assumes that the blast is coming his way, so he braces himself for it, but then all of a sudden, the attack goes past him and finishes Ile off. The blast splits the noble boy into multiple pieces, which leaves Luca horrified. He's shocked because he had no idea that the knight wasn't even going for him. By the 10th second, the Korite Paladin launches another deadly attack, and by the 11th second, Luca is staring death right in the face. Determined to stay alive and avenge his friend, Luca prepares to face the Korite Paladin one last time. He activates his rocket boots and jets toward the enemy, but that's when we see another Imperial Guard in the distance getting ready to join the fight. It's been 12 seconds already, so it makes sense that the senior Imperial Guard has arrived. The Caped Guard activates his rocket boots as well and flies towards the two who are already about to clash. Just when Luca and the Korite Paladin are about to collide, the Imperial Guard grabs the knight by the head and casually drags him out of the fight. The Imperial Guard shows just why he's such a formidable warrior when he shoves the Korite knight's head into the ground and almost buries it. As if that's not enough, the Imperial Guard activates his rockets and uses the force from the jets to drag the Paladin's head in the dirt. The Imperial Guards quite literally wipes the floor with the knight and drags him till they crash into the arcane structure from earlier. A huge explosion follows, and our boy watches the whole thing unfold from afar. Eventually, the smoke starts to settle, and as it finally clears, the red eyes of the Imperial Guard glint with power. As soon as our boy sees this, he is so relieved, feeling that he has been saved. At the moment, it's looking like the Imperial Guard just won the fight, but that's not exactly the case. The caped warrior starts walking away, but then all of a sudden, the Korite Paladin gets back up from the rubble, and of course, the Imperial Guard senses this. He turns around to see the relentless knight charging up again for round 2, and it becomes clear that the fight is far from over. The Imperial Guard turns around to face the White Knight once again, but even though the Korite Paladin isn't backing down, you can tell that the guy isn't in the best shape. His helmet is shattered, and unlike his clash with Luca earlier, there are now several visible dents on his armor. Seeing this, the red-eyed warrior prepares for round 2 against the Korite Paladin. He tightens his grip on his terrifying sword to activate its power, and all of a sudden, a thick cloud of smoke starts coming out of the blade, suggesting that it's an extremely dangerous weapon. While all of this is happening, Luca quietly watches the standoff from behind. This is a clash between two powerful opponents. On one side, there's an Imperial Guard wearing the weapon of the Empire, known as a Legion. And on the other side, there's a Holy Knight of Korite who uses the Force. It's almost like a representation of the Empire versus the Korite Alliance. In no time, the epic clash begins and there's only one question that follows. Which side is stronger? The two forces collide, throwing everything they've got, and the explosions that follow show just how mind-blowingly powerful these two warriors are. Their clash sends shockwaves throughout the area, but neither side relents. Time after time, they go at each other, landing powerful strikes on each other in the ultimate slugfest. The explosions continue non-stop as both forces repeatedly collide with each other in evenly matched showdown. Luca watches as they slug it out relentlessly, hoping to get a good summary of the battle, but these powerhouses are just too fast for him. It's so bad that he can't even keep up or track their weapons with his eyes. He watches anxiously throughout, desperately hoping that the Imperial Guard wins. After several head-on clashes between the two, it suddenly starts to look like the Korite Knight might be taking the upper hand. The white paladin takes a shot at the Imperial Guard and finally deals some significant damage, but just when the Korite warrior looks like he might actually be winning, the red-caped soldier turns the table again. The Imperial Guard grabs onto the knight's head like he did the first time and palms him in the face before dragging his head and shoving it down into the dirt a second time. The Accretion warrior pins his opponent to the ground at this point and holds the paladin down for a while, preparing to finish him off for good. Now, it looks like it's all over for the Korite warrior, but this white-caped spear thrower refuses to give up. Despite being held down, the paladin discreetly attempts to use the Force to ambush the Imperial Guard. The plan seems to be working because all of a sudden, the spear lifts off from the ground and starts levitating. It glows brightly right behind our boy, and it doesn't take Luca long to realize that something crazy is about to happen. He senses the floating spear glowing behind him, and fear grips him immediately because he knows just how deadly the weapon is. At that moment, a thought passes through Luca's mind. The Imperial Guard has no idea about and is currently unaware of how powerful the spear is, but our boy has experienced the full force and speed of the spear, so he knows that the red-caped soldier will likely be unable to react to it. Luca curses out in frustration when he sees the spear loading up and begins to panic, afraid that the tables are about to turn once again. He barely managed to survive against the white-caped monster for 12 seconds, so he knows for a fact that he's going to end up dead as well if the Imperial Guard gets killed. With this in mind, his desperation to survive skyrockets, and all he can think about at that moment is how he needs to do something right now. The glowing spear continues to charge up with power, and then all of a sudden, it shoots up from TBE ground like a rocket, aimed right for the Imperial Guard. Our boy knows that he won't be able to stop the spear completely, but he hopes to derail it and alter its trajectory, so he puts his leg in the path of the spear to do this. Of course, the unstoppable weapon shoots right through his mechanical leg, bursting it into several pieces before continuing its flight. Sure, our boy just lost a leg, but he's hopeful that he might have successfully changed the path of the spear. So, as the projectile of death speeds toward the Imperial Guard like a heat-seeking missile, Luca desperately prays for it to miss. At the very last second, it suddenly starts to look like the White Knight had a different plan from the start. The good part is that the spear misses the Imperial Guard, but it suddenly looks like that wasn't even part of the plan because the Korite Paladin casually catches the weapon. Despite being pinned to the ground and suffocated by the red-eyed warrior, the knight still manages to catch the spear with his free hand. The weapon begins to glow even more than before, and it's at this point that the Imperial Guard realizes that something is going on. Seeing that the fight is taking an unexpected turn, the guard tries to end the tussle with a killer blow. He loads up the punch to absolutely annihilate the Korite warrior for good, but the knight also puts the deadly spear in his path, and holds the tip up to make sure that it pierces right through his enemy. The force from the final blow is absolutely devastating, and the explosion that follows is something similar to the scale you'd get from a nuclear bomb going off. Shockwaves from the blast spread throughout the forest, blowing away everything in the way. Debris from the explosion also shot up into the sky and began to fall down like rain after a while. By this time, we see our boy lying on the ground with his right leg gone, helmet shattered and multiple parts of his body destroyed. He lies there in exhaustion, confused and curious as to what just happened. All he saw was the blinding light from the blast, so he doesn't even know who won the fight or who survived the entire thing among the trainees. He is also really scared that the Korite Knight might have survived, because if that actually happened, then he has no way of making it out of here alive. Just then, he hears footsteps approaching him and the fear consumes him because he immediately thinks that it's the white-haired knight coming to finish him off. As the footsteps become even louder, Luca starts begging desperately at the back of his mind, but then his fears are instantly neutralized when he hears the voice of the Imperial Guard telling him that he did a good job today. The senior admits that he was able to take down the knight because of Luca and then asks him if he got injured in his abdomen. Hearing the familiar voice of the Imperial Guard, our Joy is extremely relieved and then reveals that he got hurt when he tried to dodge the force slash. Clearly, our boy is in a lot of pain and can't even get up on his own since one of his legs had been blown off. So, the Imperial Guard offers to assist him and help him get back to base. The guy then gives him a hand to help him up, and in that moment, Luca gets to see the Imperial Guard in all his glory up close for the first time. His eyes widen as he beholds the full-body mechanical armor of the Imperial Guard called Legion. This is an armor that the Empire bestows upon their Imperial Guards. They achieve this ultimate armor upgrade by removing all the feeble parts of the human body unnecessary for combat. This armor is an item that allows one to become the ultimate weapon, and every trainee in the Empire dreams of receiving a Legion as it's the testament of an Imperial Guard. However, there are also some horrifying aspects to this seemingly perfect warrior. For starters, Luca realizes that this guy doesn't have a brain. He is taken back by this because the guy is alive, and it makes him wonder if he's actually a human or a machine at this point. Luca asks this question out of curiosity, but little does he know that it's about to become a serious turning point for him. Hearing this, the Imperial Guard seems a little confused, but then all of a sudden, the giant mecha warrior starts freaking out. Apparently, this Imperial Guard wasn't even aware that his brain was gone and starts to malfunction. This crash out leads the Imperial Guard to fall on his knees all of a sudden before shutting down. Seeing this, our boy is really shaken. He stares at the soulless face of the Imperial and realizes that there's nothing behind the glass and metal. Luca is horrified by the fact that he's been striving so hard to become a monster like this all this time. Chills run down his spine and all he can feel right now is the cold. His body can't even stop shaking from before, and not just because his body suffered a lot of damage. Of course, he took a nasty hit to the gut and now he's bleeding out on the floor next to the Imperial Guard that just powered down next to him. He's very anxious and so close to a nervous breakdown, which makes him wonder if he can even survive until help arrives. Our boy can already feel the life seeping out of him, and as he looks up at the Imperial Guard, he realizes that this is going to be the last thing he sees before he dies. Just when our boy is about to give up and accept his fate, a familiar voice calls out to him asking him if he's alive. He's surprised to hear Ilei's voice and turns to look at his best friend because he can't even believe it. He didn't think that the noble boy would survive after being blasted by the Korite Knight. Ilei admits that he's not in the best condition, which makes sense since the blondie also lost some body parts in the battle. He asks Ilei about the others and the noble boy simply informs him that they're all dead already. That's also when we see the knight's headless body lying in a pool of blood nearby. Right now, our boy is moments away from dying, but at least, it's a peaceful way to go out next to his friend. Ilei asks him how bad his wounds are and Luca simply states that he's going to die soon. With the last energy inside of him, he asks Ilei what he plans to do now, and he seems confused at first. Our boy tells him to look ahead, stating that the life he has always wanted all this time is now right in front of his eyes. Hearing this, the noble boy simply remains silent, not sure what to say. Luca shows him that he's so close to Korite and Bellado where he's always wanted to go. This is literally what he's wished for since he was a young boy, and now it's right in front of him. His passions can't be found in the Empire, so Luca encourages him to go chase his dreams now if he wants. Our boy claims that he's alright and that he can take care of himself till reinforcements arrive. Luca urges his noble friend to leave now and head over to Korite before it's too late. Once the reinforcements arrive, they'll be forced to return to the Empire, and Ilei will never have this opportunity again, so Luca once again tells him to go away now. At that moment, our boy watches his blonde-haired friend walk away. Ilei comes from a background with guaranteed wealth and fame along with the ability to back it up. As far as our boy is concerned, any citizen of the Empire would be jealous of the noble boy because of the family he was born to. It looks as though the blondie already has everything he could ever ask for, so the fact that he's running away from the life he's been given makes Luca kinda confused. He doesn't understand the noble boy because when he was talking about his dreams, it was the brightest Luca had ever seen him shine. It was clear that Ilei wanted something different for himself, and so now that there's an opportunity for him to go and live the life he's always wanted, our boy closes his eyes, feeling that it might be the last time, and prepares to take his last breath, but then all of a sudden, he's drawn out of his slumber when he feels a sudden pressure on his torso. He opens his eyes and that's when he sees Ile applying pressure to the wound on his belly. Our boy is speechless at this point and really confused too. He asks the blonde boy what the hell he's doing and even calls him an idiot for not taking the chance to get a new life. In response, Ile admits that he got worried seeing Luca act like this. The spiky-haired boy is usually relentless and determined to fight till the end for the Empire if not for anything. But this time, there was this finality in his tone which made Ile afraid that he might actually die. The noble boy admits that there's no way he'll be able to live on without the feeling of guilt if he just walks away, and lets his friend die like this. Hearing this, our boy just sighs in defeat, realizing that his buddy isn't going anywhere right now. The two friends sit there together in silence and a while later, the reinforcements from the Empire arrive in an aircraft hovering above them. The story continues with our boy reading what appears to be some kind of comic book about starship trespassing or whatever. He's gotten some major repairs done to his mechanical body, and you can tell because it's no longer all black like it used to be. All 4 of his limbs were replaced with higher quality ones and his arms that were malfunctioning are now fully working since he's casually flipping through the pages. Luca seems pretty invested in the book he's reading for some reading and also kinda intrigued by it. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Ile jumps out of nowhere, startling him. It's not been too long since they were rescued judging by the fresh bandage on Luca's face. Ile asks Luca if he's checking the book for new body parts to get and that's when we see that our boy was not actually reading a comic book. It's actually like a catalog of different parts available to the Imperial Guards for their upgrades and as soon as Ile sees the book, he recommends getting the F-24 Ruse model. The noble boy claims that its adaptation period is short and suggests that it's a great option because it means that Luca will be back on F-field sooner. The parts he's got on now are great no doubt but Ile feels that the newer model would be much better than what he's using right now, especially for combat. While the blondie is rambling from behind him, Luca manages to collect himself and then snaps at the boy for startling him like that. He tells the guy to stop coming out of nowhere like that to sneak up on him like a cat. Seeing Luca's reaction, the blondie nervously apologizes for catching him off guard because he didn't know that he had shocked him. After returning to the Empire and completing his treatment, Luke was called to different departments for investigation, just like the one they're sitting in right now, waiting to be called upon. These two are the only survivors from their mission to the arcane site, so the Imperial Guard wanted to know exactly what happened. They wanted to talk to Luca about the place where the 3 cadets and the Imperial Guard member were killed. The failed mission has become a serious issue in the Imperial Guard and they have started calling it the Corin Paladin Encounter Incident. Currently, Luca is sitting in the lobby, waiting to be called because he feels that this is still what they want to talk about, but he quickly realizes that he's been called for other reasons. While he's being all nervous, Ile suddenly asks him if he's heard the latest. Of course, our boy is just coming out of recovery so he couldn't have heard much, and that's when the blondie reveals that the Imperial Guard seems to have found an artifact at the site they went to. Ile reveals that there are currently plenty of arguments as to which has ownership of the item because of the location where it was found. Hearing this, our boy instantly has a thought. He knows that the floating cube is the reason behind all of this and he can already tell that this is just the beginning of the conflict. He's pretty curious about the whole thing so he turns to Ile and asks the noble boy if he knows who is collecting the artifact for the Empire now despite the argument. In response, Ile reveals that he heard they are forming a retrieval team that only has specialists for such purposes. If the Holy Alliance refuses to give up the historic site as well as the artifact, then it's likely that a huge war will occur. Ile gets nervous just thinking about this because he can already imagine the kind of destruction that would follow a clash of that scale. If the Empire were to go to battle against Corite, Balada would profit just by watching them fight and take advantage of the conflict. Ile explains that this is why so many smaller scale battles were taking place where they could tolerate the losses. Anything other than that would be a big blow to the Akresha Empire, and the noble boy if afraid that they might not be able to recover so quickly. Hearing all of this, Luca is quite bothered too, but he also makes it very clear that he's not interested in the politics behind the battles. All he wants is to take orders and fight for the Empire because as far as he's concerned, that's what a member of the Imperial Guard is supposed to do. That's what they were created for and that's exactly what he wants to do. Our boy suddenly thinks back to the time when he was reporting about one of the members of the Imperial Guard who got his head blown off. After our boy told them what happened to the red-caped warrior that died in front of him, the captain summarized the event, calling it a phantom phenomenon caused by residual signals. Sure, in the moment, Luca didn't really have a choice but to take whatever the commander said as the truth, but up until now, he's still bothered by the incident, and keeps wondering if it really was just a residual signal like the captain said. Our boy doesn't think that was really the case, because he noticed the Imperial Guard reacting to his words after he died. And as such, he refuses to believe that it was no phantom phenomenon. Overall, there are still questions Luca has that were left unanswered. He's very curious right now about a lot of mysterious things happening in the Imperial Guard, but despite being very desperate for answers. However, our boy isn't stupid enough to look into the questions that headquarters keeps refusing to give answers to. There is an extravagant location within the training facilities of the cadets that doesn't fit. The place is called the visiting room, and this place is created for cadets to meet with friends and family. Since he was from a nursery school, he thought that he would never come to this place, so naturally, he didn't expect anyone to be looking for him either. And that's why it comes as a big surprise to him when he sees a familiar white-haired girl in the visiting room. Even more surprising, she came to see him, and this girl turns out to be Lilian Ramon's, who just happens to be Claude's younger sister. He's so confused when he sees her because he doesn't get why she came to see him. He figures that she came to question him about Claude's death since he was the leader of the team when her brother got killed. The image of Claude's death flashes across Luca's mind in that moment, and it causes him to start panicking. Luckily for him, Lilian didn't come to make trouble. She can see how bothered he is, so she assures him that she didn't come to express her hatred toward him. She tells him not to worry about it, revealing that their entire family was expecting this news to come eventually the moment her brother became a member of the Imperial Guard. After explaining that, they both have some tea, and that's when she confirms that she came here today to see him, Luca. She tells him that her brother talked a lot about him and always went on and on about how talented he was among all the other cadets. Luca reveals that her brother asked him if she was interested in meeting her before he died, and then asks her if she knows where he comes from already. In response, the girl takes a sip of her tea and admits that she personally prefers that. As far as she's concerned, there are fewer formalities that they need to go through due to Luca's background. Hearing her say this leaves our boy a little taken aback, because he immediately realizes that she's interested in dating him and not just doing here visiting him because of her brother. She can sense the uncertainty in his voice, and so she asks him if he doesn't like the idea of them being together. He's kinda overwhelmed and also very curious as to why he's the one she wants something serious with. At this point, she asks him if her dead brother asking for it isn't enough. In her mind, honoring her brother's request should be a good enough reason for them to get together. Besides, she doesn't see any reason why Luca would want to refuse her offer. She claims that he has much to benefit from their relationship, stating that many people would be jealous of him when they find out that she's with him. Hearing this, Luca admits that she's right. Indeed, it's an offer that he has no reason to turn down. Someone like him from the lower ranks, getting the opportunity to marry a woman with such a good background is a golden chance that most men would grab without hesitation if they were in his shoes. Luca did everything up to this point to succeed in life, so if he can get married to a noble woman, getting closer to his goal, then there's nothing better that could happen to him. However, as beautiful as this all looks right now, he can't shake off the feeling that this opportunity almost seems too easy. It doesn't feel real, and that's why he feels more reluctant to accept. It's one of those things that feels too good to be true, and it might just be a ticking bomb waiting to explode in his face when he least expects it. For this reason, after giving it a lot of thought, he eventually makes up his mind and makes it clear to her that he'll have to refuse her offer. The white-haired girl is shocked when she hears this because she never imagined that anyone would turn her down in such a way. She's still trying to process what he just said when Luca gets up and bids her farewell. Luca used to think that Ile, who was from a good background, was stupid for trying to escape the Empire. However, he never thought that he would be dumb enough to make a decision based on a feeling. He knows that Lilian will take this as an insult since she's a noble, so he just hopes that nothing tiring will come out of this whole thing. He just rejected her offer despite her doing everything she could to convince him, so he really hopes that she can get over it. Lilian admits that she must have rushed with her proposal and understands why he's overwhelmed by it. So, she's willing to slow things down and start by being friends rather than just rushing into a relationship. She holds on to him tightly and doesn't let go, hoping to change his mind. Luca sees the desperation in her eyes, but he tells her that he didn't reject her offer because it was rushed. At this point, she lets go of his hand and then runs off, feeling embarrassed, but she assures him that she will come see him again soon. Lilian makes her way out of the visiting room, and as he watches her leave, he realizes that she'll be hard to get rid of. The scene shifts and we're suddenly taken to the Akresha physical training room. Here, we see our boy standing face to face with one of the superiors. The man looks pleased to see our boy and laughs excitedly, admitting that he never thought Luca would come to him. This man turns out to be the Akreshan Imperial Guard's fighting instructor, Kinuan. In response, our boy simply assures the man that he's here now, stating that he wants to learn from the instructor. The man feels that there is nothing he can teach him regarding fighting because he's already skilled enough as it is. Kinnuan claims that there are only a few cadets that surpass Luca's skills no matter how many he tries to recall out of all the ones he has trained. Hearing this, our boy just gets hung up on the fact that there are even still cadets that are stronger than him. So he informs the instructor that he is not satisfied with only being the best among the cadets. Kinnuan is amused by this, but he totally understands his ambition, so he assures the boy that there is no need to rush himself. Kinnuan is the cadet's fighting instructor, and even though he's strong, he's not domineering like the other instructors. Unlike the other instructors and guards, he uses a low-power everyday augment. So, compared to the new augment he just got, he feels that he should be 10 times stronger physically. The only thing that he has a disadvantage in right now should be the fact he might still be weaker overall since he doesn't have a full-body argumentation. Luca feels that he won't stand a chance against someone as strong as the Korean paladin if he's not able to defeat the instructor. With this in mind, he loads up his new arm and prepares to get right into the duel. He thanks the instructor for the opportunity, and the jovial man just sighs, reminding Luca that he didn't exactly leave him with any other choice. Either way, he's glad to spar with his talented cadet, so he encourages Luca to bring it on. Hearing this, the boy leaps into action and starts the duel, attempting to land a devastating right hook on the man. He casually deflects the punch and stops Luca with ease, asking him if he took the swing because he wanted to test out his new augment. The instructor's cockiness obviously pisses our boy off, so he gets ready to land a second attack. Luca is determined to make a statement in this duel. Kinnuan might be a retired Imperial guard, but our boy still knew that he wouldn't flinch facing an attack like this. Nevertheless, the young trainee believes that he's got a shot at beating the instructor, so he unleashes a barrage of attacks, landing blows at the speed of light, but the old man casually blocks all of them without even breaking a sweat. Eventually, Luca figures that the best way to go would be to simply jump on Kinnuan to close the distance. So, he jumps at the man and takes yet another mighty swing, hoping to catch the retired Imperial guard by surprise and finish him off. Our boy uses one hand to first take away the instructor's defense, and then uses the second hand to load up the supercharged punch. At this point, our boy is confident that this is where he wins, but at the very last second, it's almost like Kinnuan's senses go into overdrive in the blink of an eye, and in that same moment, Luca suddenly finds himself upside down in the air. By the time he realizes where he is so shocked. He has no idea how he got in the air, but despite being taken aback by the retired Imperial Guard's mysterious counter, he refuses to give up. Luca manages to regain his balance fast enough to organize a follow-up attack. Luca starts from a handstand position and tries to use his feet to kick the instructor in the face before he can even turn around. Just when it looks like his metal foot is about to make contact with Kinnuan's face, the experienced warrior grabs Luca's foot with blistering speed and casually tosses him across the training ground like a piece of cloth. In that split moment, Luca finds himself flying across the room, and before he can even get his bearings, he crashes on the floor. At this point, he begins to understand just how strong his opponent is. Just then, Kinnuan walks over to him and reveals that Luca failed to gauge the strength of his opponent, just like he allowed himself to get distracted by something else during their fight. For the first time, the fighting instructor looks really terrifying to our boy. The instructor teases him, asking why he's in such a hurry, and a look of horror just appears on Luca's face as he wonders what the hell just happened. From his angle, he feels that his first attack should have struck Kinnuan in the chin, but that wasn't the case because as soon as Kinnuan touched his arm, his body staggered and it was as if he had lost control. At first, this is what runs through his mind, but he starts to wonder if the kinetic energy he sent to Kinnuan was transferred back and shook his body. Our boy is so shocked that he's forced to ask the veteran what just happened, and in response, the man reveals that it's a self-defense method of his. Hearing this, Luca begins to get back on his feet and asks if he could possibly learn the technique. However, Kinnuan just asks if he's sure he wants to learn it even after seeing him like this. That's when we see that the instructor is bleeding, and at this point, he informs the young trainee that there's always a price to shortcuts. The instructor suddenly goes down on his knees to join Luca and then asks our boy what he learned from their short battle just now. In response, our boy claims that he felt like he had just been charmed because his body moved on its own and it was out of his control. At this point, Kinnuan calls it Archi's Victima, revealing that this is the method he used and that it can also be called the Archi's Combat method. Luca instantly recognizes the name because he learned earlier that this is the name of the method that the typical thugs use. He has a hard time believing that it's the same because what Kinnuan just showed him was so impressive that it could be considered being implemented in the military standard. Hearing this, the instructor admits that the Imperial Guard actually considered it but also explains that there are 3 glaring problems associated with using Archi's Victima. At this point, Luca figures that one of the problems is the fact that it's hard to learn and the instructor agrees with him, commending him for being smart. He then asks Luca to think of the other 2, and our boy suggests that brain problem must be one of the side effects because the man is currently experiencing it. Hearing this, Kinnuan agrees with him once again and then tells Luca that he can't learn the last reason for now. However, our boy insists that he'll be more than willing to take on such risks if he can get stronger. Unfortunately, the instructor informs him that he doesn't get to decide that. He's already an asset of the Empire, and Kinnuan reminds him of this, asking him if he has any idea how much money has been pumped into him already. Luca tries to protest, but the instructor insists that he can learn the Archi's combat method because it's too dangerous. It inevitably causes problems in the brain, so he asks Luca if he can swear that he'll stop using it. Our boy begins to panic after being asked this question, because he knows that Kinnuan will find out if he lies to him. With this in mind, he admits that he can't swear by it but vows to try his best not to use the technique. Hearing this, a smile appears on the man's face, so he turns around to look Luca dead in the eye and tells him that he likes his honesty. Our boy is pretty confused right now, and then all of a sudden, Kinnuan trips him and sends him falling to the ground. The instructor walks away after this, but before leaving the arena, he tells Luca to always anticipate an attack from him henceforth. That way, he'll be ready for any situation. Hearing this, our boy quickly realizes that this means that Kinnuan is going to teach him the method, and before he can even ask, the man tells him to get up, stating that he likes fast learners. Sometime later, Ile comes around to see Luca and is instantly worried about him because he's afraid that our boy isn't getting enough sleep. He asks Luca about it, but our boy insists that it's nothing, claiming that he's just been busy. It's been a month since Luca started sparring with Kinnuan daily, and it's been a hell of a ride so far. The man didn't particularly teach him anything yet, since he just wanted Luca to observe and learn on his own. The Archi's combat method was vastly different from what our boy had learned in the past. Most combat methods focus on learning a specific skill and honing it. However, the Archi's combat method seems to make the most out of the skills he has. In other words, it's a superior combat algorithm that uses all the weapons in Luca's arsenal to create the most efficient fighting method in seconds, which makes it a way of utilizing the mind. Luca asks his noble friend how his mission was to change the topic, and Ile admits that it was actually boring. He claims that he has to get rid of a malfunctioning android and goes on to reveal that all the missions he's received recently have been like this. To him, they've all been child's play. Hearing this, Luca figures that Incite must be playing it safe because of the major incident the last time. He even suggests that it's the reason why the chief centurion hasn't been around. However, that's not exactly the case. Ile reveals that he's heard some stuff from his family recently, and Luca wonders if it's a rebellion because that's the kind of thing that could require the attention of the chief centurion. Turns out that our boy's guess is actually right because Ile immediately confirms this. He admits that he doesn't have the details yet, but confirms that a group of people plotted a rebellion. This news bothers Luca a lot because it's like the last thing they need right now. They are at war with the Incite alliance, and now some idiot wants to start a civil war. He finds it all really stupid, and while he's still fuming over it, Ile says something that gets him really mad. The blondie tells him that he'll just rot from the inside if he disregards these problems as stupidity. And in the blink of an eye, Luca grabs Ile by the neck and furiously slams him into the wall. He balls his fists and reminds Ile that he's warned him several times about slandering the Empire. Luca claims that he can overlook Ile wanting to run away from the Empire, but assures him that he won't let it slide if the noble boy wishes to become an enemy. At this point, Ile reminds Luca that he also passed the aptitude test for being an Imperial Guard and claims that he was only suggesting that the notion for the rebellion should be important to the Empire. That being said, he gives Luca a challenging smile and tells the hothead to calm down. Luca finally lets him go and warns him not to make statements that could incite suspicion. He goes on to state that he doesn't want to see Ile's name on the rebel list because he's sure sounding like one of them right now. In response, the noble boy assures him that he's only saying such things in front of his good friend. Still, Luca doesn't ease up, and Ile keeps trying to calm him down. He even promises to treat him to some food over the weekend, but our boy isn't interested, so he tells the blondie that he also has plans. He also tells Ile not to talk to him because he's irritating. Luca tries to walk away, but the blondie doesn't let it go. He just keeps teasing him, asking the hothead if his plans are with a girl. The scene shifts to the Acretia lower sector, and that's where we see what plans Luca actually has. He follows Kinnuin here for some undercover mission, and the instructor admits that it's been a while since he was here. He also knows that it's a familiar feeling for Luca since they're both from the slums. Hearing this, our boy admits that he thought he'd never come to the lower sector again the day he became a trainee. He never wanted to return here because he didn't even want to breathe the same air as these idiots down here. Kinnuin isn't surprised to hear this from the ambitious boy because he's certainly the type to climb high. Luca definitely didn't expect the instructor to bring him here when he told him to make plans for their next training. It doesn't take long for them to come across some people fighting for no reason, which makes you understand why Luca hates this place so much. The air of the lower sector is foul. The whole city is powered by thermal energy from magma that lies under the city, and all the unfiltered waste and heat is released into the lower sector. In Luca's younger days, back when he was breathing in the air all the time, he felt like he needed to get out or else he'd stay a loser his whole life. Just then, Kinnuin makes a turn into an alley, and the moment Luca sees this, he just sighs in frustration. After looking around a bit, he figures that this place must be a black market, so he asks Kinnuin, who confirms it, wondering if it's his first time. Luca has never been to one, but he remembers that there were a few kids who never came back after visiting this place out of curiosity. After spending some time here with the instructor, Luca realizes that the man is really knowledgeable when it comes to the lower sector's layout. He's surprised that a man who's been an Imperial guard for decades knows this place better than he does. For this trip, Kinnuin ordered Luca to use prosthetic arms and legs with low energy output, and this just makes our boy wonder what the man is planning. Soon, they reach a building and Kinnuin tells him to get ready. Once they're at the door, a group of bodyguards stop them and inform them that the spectator entrance is on the other side. The instructor wears a smile the whole time and tells the guards that he needs to speak to the supervisor of this establishment. Hearing this, they ask him if he knows their boss Aleph, and Kinnuin admits that he doesn't know the guy. He just wanted to see him. Of course, this pisses the guys off, so one of them points a gun at Kinnuin, calling him a crazy fuck. The instructor just smiles at the guy for a second, and then Luca suddenly trips him before he can even see it coming. He points the gun at the other guard and warns him not to even think about moving. At this point, it's clear that these two visitors aren't ordinary people, and the guards can see it, so Kinnuin confidently asks them to bring Aleph out for this right away. After disarming the guards, the duo watch them run inside to call their boss, and Luca asks Kinnuin what he would have done if he wasn't fast enough to disarm the guy. In response, the instructor claims that he would have just found another way. At the moment, our boy still doesn't know what this place is or what they're doing here. So, Kinnuin informs him that this is the hottest place in the entire empire. Luca is taken aback when he hears this, so the instructor turns to him with a mischievous look and reveals that this is the coliseum. Shortly after the drama at the entrance, Luca and Kinnuin are finally ushered inside to see the boss Aleph. The big guy really has the looks of a mafia boss, but the Imperial guards are not even slightly intimidated by him. Kinnuin sits across from Aleph while Luca stands behind him like a bodyguard. All of a sudden, the instructor points to our boy and tells Aleph to put the boy in a match. He claims that he doesn't need a cut from the winnings and even says that it's okay if Luca dies fighting. Hearing this, our boy immediately realizes that this is the reason why the instructor told him to come with a low-output body. In response, Aleph flicks his burnt cigarette at Kinnuin, but Luca catches it swiftly and crushes it. Of course, such a swift reaction is seen as a threat by Aleph and his bodyguards, so they pull out their guns and prepare to unleash their bullets on the visitors. Now, the mafia boss suggests that they might be confused. So, he explains that they didn't let them in because they wanted to grant their wish. Rather, he called them to a place where it's easy to dispose of a corpse. Despite Aleph's bold demeanor, Luca can tell that the man is bluffing. If he had no intention of hearing them out, he would have shot them already. There are literally 3 guns aiming directly at them right now, and the other 2 gang members are outside the room. With this in mind, our boy begins to analyze the situation so he can disarm them and neutralize the threat. So, he gets right into it and starts by kicking the table at the 3 of them before they can react. While they're still processing that, he begins to take them out. He grabs Aleph in a chokehold and uses his gun to shoot the 2 bodyguards in the blink of an eye. Of course, the noise alerts the guards outside, so they rush in, but our boy shoots them too, and right after that, he ends the simulation. It turns out that the fight didn't actually happen, but it was just a simulation he created in his head to predict how things would play out if he needed to engage. In reality, Aleph and Kinnuin are still just talking. The instructor asks what happened to the previous owner of the place, and Aleph is surprised that Kinnuan knew Tora. Apparently, the guy is dead now because he got caught rigging matches. Hearing this, Kinnuan figures that the guy killed Tora and took over the coliseum. He admits that it must be a really profitable business, revealing that Tora also killed the guy before him to get to that position. As such, he doesn't intend to fault Aleph because such things are natural events in these streets. The calm conversation quickly goes sour when Aleph becomes very suspicious. He doesn't get how this stranger knows so much about the Coliseum, so he presses the gun against Kinnuan's head to interrogate him. At this point, the retired Imperial Guard advises the chubby guy to calm down if he doesn't want to end up next to Tora. Luckily for Aleph, he doesn't blow things out of proportion, so he takes his seat and begins to consider Kinnuan's request. Seeing that all he needs to do is put Luca in a match, he begins to examine the boy's body. His arms and legs aren't made of combat models, and his body is still organic, so Aleph feels that he'll be crushed to a bloody pulp within a second. The Coliseum boss doesn't mind putting Luca in a match, but he also feels that it's only fair if they offer him something as well. Hearing this, Kinnuan informs Aleph that he knows where Tora kept his safe. He also knows that Aleph kept the guy's eye after killing him, and this just makes the mafia boss wonder how much this stranger actually knows. He's getting quite curious about Kinnuan's identity now, so the instructor claims that he's just a spirit of the past that Aleph need not worry about. Hearing this, the Coliseum boss lets it slide and offers to get Kinnuan the VIP seat, some good booze and girls. Of course, the retired Imperial Guard is fine with just the alcohol and goes on to request that Luca be matched up against the best fighter. This whole time, our boy has been watching the instructor in awe because of how well he handled the situation without even moving a muscle. He didn't need to get violent, and our boy is so sure that this is exactly what he lacks. The scene shifts and we're taken to the Coliseum waiting room where we see Luca and Kinnuan having a chat. The instructor informs him that his fight is in 2 hours and tells him to get warmed up for it. Luca suddenly asks what exactly is in Tora's safe because Aleph's attitude changed completely after hearing about it. In response, Kinnuan reveals that it's Tora's hidden treasure that's enough to change Aleph's life. Our boy then goes on to ask Kinnuan what he planned to do if a fight broke out, and the instructor isn't surprised by the question. He knows that Luca must have been so curious to find out and promises to explain it to him after he wins his fight. That being said, he shows Luca who he'll be fighting, a big monstrous cyborg dude named Gabriel, the Steel Fist. The Coliseum is bustling with idiots who use illegal mods at the cost of their lifespan, so Gabriel is likely the type of guy who doesn't worry about his future as well. Our boy is a little overwhelmed by how big the guy is, and even Kinnuan admits that Luca might die from a single hit since he's using a weaker body. He tells Luca to remember what he's about to tell him because it's the fundamental of the Arky's combat method. At this point, our boy is all ears, so he curiously asks the man what it is he's about to say. Surprisingly, the instructor tells Luca to be satisfied with what he has, and as you can imagine, this quote doesn't exactly sit well with the ambitious boy. He tells Kinnuan that he learned that to be satisfied is to lose. However, the instructor corrects him, stating that water does not lose but merely changes its form. He reminds Luca that he has real potential, claiming that he's been watching him ever since he deflected a bullet with a ballistic predictor. Kinnuan even admits that he was surprised when Luca came to him asking to be taught. Sure, the instructor can say without a doubt that our boy came to the right person since he's a man of talent as well. Hearing all of this, Luca just gets suspicious because the instructor is giving him unfounded praise. The man admits this, claiming that it's because this could be the last time he sees Luca. And when our boy hears this, a confident smile creeps up on his face because he relishes the challenge. The scene shifts once again, and this time around, the lights come on in the arena of the Coliseum. The spectators go crazy as the commentator starts the announcements, talking about the newcomer who dared to challenge Gabriel the Steel Fist on his first match. They all feel that Luca can't win, but the question now is whether the guy will be able to go home after the fight today. The commentator calls him a brat that's still sucking his mother's breasts, and announces that his stage name is Good Boy. As you can imagine, Luca doesn't appreciate the shiny name that was chosen for him, but that's the least of his worries right now. The moment he steps onto the arena, the spectators start jeering at him, calling him an idiot, and wondering who let him in here. As far as they're concerned, he's trying to kill himself, but at the end of the day, most of them don't mind a slaughter show. They're all hyped up. A human's dark desire to see the flesh and gore of others is exactly what is pushing Luca into the ring right now. After seeing how excited they all are, he concludes that they must really want to see his limbs torn off and his face mutilated. Our boy actually feels that it's a good thing because all that energy makes his sense that he's finally back home. With this motivation, he makes his way to the center of the ring and prepares to leave his mark in the coliseum. But first, he'd like to know how all these fucking losers have been since the last time he was in the lower sector. In a flashback scene, we see a younger version of Luca looking like an absolutely hateful child. In this scene, he stands with an empty tray and he reveals that he doesn't remember ever being full as a kid. An official of the Empire would stop by twice a month to send them supplies, but the principal of the orphanage always sold more than half of them to fill his own pockets. Therefore, to the kids in the orphanage, starvation was something quite natural. However, even when Luca was starving, he never stopped training. He read every book that was filled with dust from disuse and lifted rusty chunks of iron to strengthen his muscles. In this flashback, Luca is confronted by the other kids at the orphanage one day. They catch him lifting weights while eating the little food he has for the day, so they ask him why he's wasting his strength. As far as they're concerned, he's just going to make himself hungrier by doing this, but of course, nothing they can say will make him stop. So, he responds to them, informing them that he's working out because he can get more with his power if he's hungry. In other words, the strong eat the weak, and that's when we learn that Luca actually used his strength to bully the other kids for their food. Luca understood the laws of this world quite well from an early age. It's natural for the strong to be full and the weak to starve. Of course, all that the other kids could do was cry and curse at him. They talked about how he was just a double-digit kid like the rest of them, claiming that he would have been placed in a single-digit orphanage if he was really born different. At the end of the day, they always reminded him that he was just a member of the lower floors. But he already knew this, so it didn't matter what they said. After all, Luca knew that he didn't need to listen to the cries of losers. He carried on living the same way, which allowed him to survive and get even stronger. At the age of 12, he received the second aptitude test and got his name on the list of potential Imperial Guard trainees. By the time he was 15, he officially became an Imperial Guard trainee. So after going through all that, it was clear that the losers could never fathom the life he'd lived, and he hoped to never see them again after leaving the lower sector. As such, for a large majority of his time as a trainee, he forgot about this place. After all, he thought that he'd never have to return, but here he was, once again, standing in the midst of the same losers she so despised. And just like before, they still aren't on his side. Luca makes his way to the middle of the arena and the crowd starts chanting Gabriel's name, urging him to come out. Sure enough, the excessively modified warrior comes out to join Luca in the middle of the Coliseum. The big guy is pretty surprised at how small Luca is. He can't believe that he was matched up with a brat like this and concludes that Aleph must have smoked some nasty shit today to have allowed such a fixture. Anyway, he doesn't really care too much about that as long as he gets paid. At the same time, Luca quietly watches his boastful opponent talk shit about him. He examines the guy's body and notices that all his limbs come from different manufacturers. Besides that, the big guy has also completely disregarded any symmetry and balance. His spine is curved from the load of his modifications, and the parts of his flesh that are in contact with the metal suffer from constant inflammation. The guy probably can't even sleep without painkillers from what our boy can see. However, this doesn't change the fact that Gabriel, the Steel Fist, is extremely powerful. His crazy body is one that is modified solely for the purpose of being stronger. Gabriel leans over to Luca, curious about what the hell the boy is staring at. After taking a closer look at our boy, he realizes that the kid's face isn't that bad and asks Luca to serve him at night for some reason. In response, our boy just smiles at the big guy and suggests that he'll need a servant from now on, boldly telling him that he's going to become a cripple after today. Hearing this, Gabriel is absolutely livid. The fight hasn't started yet, so he can't do anything for now. So he tells Luca that he's going to bash him into the ground so much until he's begging to be his servant. Seeing this, Aleph gets all excited because he can tell that this is going to be a very interesting battle. He takes the mic and announces that this is the miniature version of the kill or be killed world. And just like that, he begins the fight. The big question now is whether Luca will be crushed or if he will triumph. At this point, we get to see Kinuan watching the whole thing quietly from the stands while the other spectators go crazy. Aleph announces that the slaughter show is officially about to begin and the two fighters prepare themselves for the slugfest. Luca examines Gabriel's body once again. The guy's body is modified solely for combat, and today, our boy is using non-combat parts. That puts him at a disadvantage, and he knows for sure that he'll die instantly if he gets hit even once. With this in mind, he probably has a different strategy that he wants to use against the big brute, but we can't be sure because even when Gabriel charges at him, he just stands there with his hands in his pocket. Just when it looks like the metal monstrosity is about to land the hit, he dodges the strike at the very last second, causing Gabriel to land his punch into the hard ground instead. Before the big guy can even process what just happened, our boy lands a mean kick on the opponent's face. Of course, this hit doesn't do any damage, and the big guy is almost insulted by it because he doesn't even get what kind of ticklish kick that was. Our boy also knew that his attack won't do much because his current body isn't strong enough. With his normal parts, Gabriel would have exploded like a fruit from a lock like that. He's been dodging the big guy for a while now, but he knows that he can't keep running away since the stadium is cramped. It's starting to become pretty tricky for Luca now because all of Gabriel's attacks are lethal, and his own strikes do almost no damage. Even the audience isn't on his side right now. After running and dodging over and over, the spectators get irritated and snaps at him. They yell at him, reminding him that this isn't hide and seek. Some of them are even wishing him death already so that they can see the next match. They start encouraging Gabriel to split Luca's head open because they can't take it anymore. At this point, our boy realizes that it's getting a lot harder than he thought. This situation he's in currently makes him wonder what Kinnuan even wanted from him when he brought him here in the first place. Just then, a memory flashes across his mind and he remembers what the instructor told him in the waiting room. The man told him to be satisfied with what he has, and in that moment, the phrase rings in his head continuously. He realizes that wishing for something he doesn't have right now won't solve anything. Praying won't make a gun drop from the sky into his hands, so he makes up his mind to fight with what he has right now, no matter how little it is. Kinnuan might have taken his limbs from him before this fight, but our boy was allowed to keep his eyes. With this in mind, he figures that the instructor doesn't expect him to overpower Gabriel with sheer strength. At this point, our boy finally begins to understand exactly what he needs to win this fight. As such, he takes the first step, which is acceptance. Arky's combat is about using what one has to its full potential, and since Luca still has his mechanical eye, he figures that now is the time to put it to good use. Luca activates his mechan eye and it allows him to analyze Gabriel's attacks even better. He can see that the guy's fists are like destructive cannons and figures that the small tremors in his shoulder should be the trigger. Luca also concludes that the direction of his gaze is the barrel, and that the length of his arm is the range. It's quite slow to prepare compared to a real gun, and its trajectory is obvious as far as our boy is concerned. He can literally predict Gabriel's next move before he executes, and when Kinnuan sees that the boy has figured it out, he concludes that Luca is a genius. The man feels that Luca has already experienced Arky's combat with his own talent, so now he expects the boy to show his true potential. All of a sudden, the whole fight takes a turn and Gabriel starts struggling. The spectators are so confused when they see this because they can't even understand how the champion is losing to a kid. They start yelling at him, urging him to kill the dumbass already. At this point, our boy is fully locked in. His concentration is better than ever. It is so good that he can fully predict Gabriel's attacks. Seeing Luca's display, even Kinnuan begins to wonder if he can do the same right now. Gabriel tries to pump Luca, but our boy sees it coming and redirects the attack with ease before landing a powerful boot to his face. The big guy is so confused when this happens because he does not even get how the kid was able to counter his powerful attack. Luca casually plasters the sole of his foot on Gabriel's face, and as the big guy goes down for the first time, a big smile creeps up on the trainee's face. He starts to get excited at this point and realizes that this is how Kinnuan was observing him. Gabriel goes on his knee for a second to recover from the shocking counter-attack. Seeing this, our boy goes to stand in front of him, waiting for his next move. Gabri admits that he doesn't know what sorcery Luca has used, but even at that, he makes it clear to our boy that his attacks are feeble. Right after saying this, Gabriel charges at Luca once again, determined to finally land the devastating blow to end the whole fight. He informs Luca that none of his attacks won't work. At this point, the guy's fist is inches away from Luca's face. He's able to scratch our boy, but before he can do any more damage than that, Luca slips out of the way, allowing the big guy to bury his huge metal fist in the wall. Gabriel is still in shock when this happens, and then Luca proceeds to get a few words in. Since the big guy feels that his attacks won't work, he wants to show him that he's wrong. Luca feels that if he lacks pure power, then he just has to make up for it with something else. Just then, our boy leaps into the air and grabs Gabriel's head. The big guy doesn't even know how to react to this, and before he can't process what's going on, Luca snaps his neck and takes him out. The spectators are dumbfounded when they see this, and he can't help but feel fulfilled because now they get to keep waiting for his demise forever. He smiles and watches them looking mortified, knowing that he'll just climb higher until their words can't even reach him. Luca takes out Gabriel, the steel fist, and starts walking away. He knows that he would not have been able to concentrate this much if this was a battlefield with many variables. It's because this is a controlled environment that he was able to concentrate well enough to predict their moves. After the fight, our boy makes his way out of the arena, and as he walks away, he realizes that he has no choice but to admit that Kinuan is a great teacher. They meet up after, and the instructor commends him for doing a great job. He then welcomes him to his induction into Archi's Victima. Hearing this, Luca reveals that he realized that accepting one's situation doesn't necessarily mean accepting defeat. As soon as he says this, the instructor gives him some kind of reward. Luca is surprised to see this because he realizes that Kinuan is giving him credit chips. This makes him wonder if he's getting the payout for winning the fight, and the instructor simply informs him that this isn't what is going on. He reveals that the chips are actually to pay for Gabriel's hospital bills. That being said, Kinuan asks Luca to give the big guy the credit chips, explaining that it's not a bad idea to show generosity as long as it doesn't make one look like a fool. In response, our boy reminds the former Imperial Guard that he wants to be a soldier and warrior, not a good Samaritan. Hearing this, Kinuan just feels a little disappointed. He concludes that Luca is quite naive regarding interpersonal relationships and makes it clear to the boy that this is what he feels. So, he explains to Luca that this kindness he's talking about is not charity, but actually an investment. Kinuan explains that such investments are for the future when he can make good use of them. After all, the retired Imperial Guard was able to reap his investments in Tora today. He reveals all this to Luca and then walks back down the tunnel, telling the boy not to forget that creating an advantageous environment for oneself is the mark of a good soldier. After hearing all that the instructor just told him, our boy realizes that he was deeply mistaken with regard to the retired Imperial Guard. Luca initially thought that the man was teaching him because he was impressed by his talent, and felt a connection since they both came from the gutters, but now he knows for sure that he definitely misjudged the clever old man. Because it's all clear to him now that all this has just been one big investment, and he is certain that the man is definitely seeking to reap what he has invested in him one day. Unfortunately, Luca knows that the man will make this request in a way that he won't be able to refuse when the time comes. The scene shifts and we're taken to the hospital room where Gabriel is receiving medical attention to save his life. The doctor examines the patient in critical condition and realizes that there's a big problem. The possible wavelengths are too short to be compatible with Gabriel's cybernetic body. The guy's current body draws so much power that it will inevitably cause problems or freeze up sooner or later. As such, the doctor recommends using something called the Zionic Corpse Hyperlindel No. 9 instead. Hearing this, Gabriel instantly starts freaking out because he knows that that's the newest model, and he also knows that he can't afford it. He gets mad instantly and accuses the doctor of trying to rip him off. As far as he's concerned, everyone seems to walk around fine with Garbotech, so he doesn't think he needs any upgrades to the newest and most expensive models. Unfortunately for him, the doctor points out that the other people didn't undergo as heavy modifications as he did. If Gabriel has even considered compatibility when getting his modifications, then an older model would have sufficed. But now, his condition is critical, and the only way out is the new model. At this point, the frustrated fighter laments how poor he was back then, and now he just slapped on whatever he could get. The doctor offers to help him out, claiming that he'll just buy his current limbs off him and attach new ones according to his budget. Gabriel asks the doctor to use combat models but quickly learns that he can't even afford that. With the money he has, the best he can get are used goods for casual use models. Hearing this, Gabriel gets pissed because he already spent so much on his current mods. Just then, Luca enters the room and asks Gabriel how he's doing. Our boy is glad to see that the guy is looking as energetic as ever, even with a broken neck. The moment Gabriel sees our boy, his blood boils as he vows to kill him. The big guy is ready to give up everything right now as long as it means that he can kill Luca, but of course, our boy isn't fazed by his threats because the guy can't do anything. He's literally a vegetable. Seeing Gabriel's reaction, Luca reminds the guy that he said he was going to cripple him before the fight. Gabriel just sighs in defeat at this point, realizing that there's really nothing he can do to the boy. At the same time, Luca realizes that Kinuan's teachings might be working even better than he expected. The instructor told him earlier to always create an advantageous environment for himself, and just now, he instinctively taunted Gabriel. Our boy actually came here for a reason, so he gets right to it. The doctor talked about the Hyperlindel No. 9 model earlier, and Luca heard him, so now he wants to know how much it would cost to acquire it for Gabriel. He shows the doctor the credits, and after confirming that it covers the cost, he pays for the treatment. Of course, Gabriel is baffled by this and furiously demands to know what the hell is going on. In response, Luca informs him that he's paying his bills, so the big guy asks him why. In response, he claims that he just feels like it, and Gabriel concludes that good boy isn't just his stage name after all. The big guy realizes that he's at the mercy of the victor and then curiously asks our boy what his real name is. At this point, Luca introduces himself, and just like that, Gabriel is indebted to him. The big guy tells him to just ask if he ever needs his help and vows to repay the debt. Upon hearing this, Luca is taken aback. He doesn't know exactly what he's feeling right now, but he knows that it's not a bad one. Back at the Akresha physical training grounds, Luca and Ile engage in another one of their intense sparring sessions. This time around, our boy is practically invincible. He blocks all of Ile's strikes with ease and casually wipes the floor with him to bring the fight to an end. After the sparring session, Ile asks him if he learned the Archi's combat method from Kinuan. Luca casually admits this, and the noble boy is pretty concerned because he knows that it's the same technique that thugs use. It's a skill considered like holding glass shards between your fingers or chucking dirt at the enemy's eyes. Luca admits that he knows it's hard to believe, but reveals that Kinuan told him what it is all about. At this point, Ile knows that he can't even dream of ever beating Luca in hand-to-hand combat anymore, but our boy admits that his noble friend is still the only trainee who can still put up a fight against him. The experience in the Coliseum was enough to shake the foundations of Luca's idea of combat. It's as if all the techniques he's practiced till now have been condensed into a single drop of knowledge. While he's thinking about this, Ile watches him nervously, wondering why he looks rather happy today. The blondie suddenly asks Luca to help him out with something if he isn't busy, and our boy gladly agrees. At the Akresha Imperial Guard trainee barracks visiting room, we see that the blondie actually tricked Luca into a meeting with Lilian Ramones. From what he look of our boy's face, Ile already knows that he's pissed, so he quickly apologizes and proceeds to explain why he had to do it. He reveals that his family has always been on good terms with the Ramones family, and so he couldn't refuse Lilian's request. The white-haired girl in question chimes in suddenly, revealing that she's applied to see Luca a number of times now and asks him why he's been avoiding her. To this, Luca bluntly informs her that he's not interested in her, and that he hoped she'd see his avoidance as his way of refusing her offer. Hearing this, Ile encourages his friend to put things a little more nicely, but Luca just tells him to shut up because the situation alone pisses him off. Of course, it doesn't take too long for Lilian to get all emotional. She asks Luca what he hates about her so much, so he explains that he doesn't have the time to meet a woman. Unlike her, someone like him who's from an orphanage has no way of climbing back up if he loses his footing. Hearing this, she suggests that it would be better if he gets closer to her instead. Unfortunately, he's not getting her point, and he doesn't think she understands him either. So, he breaks it down for her, explaining that he could lose everything at her whim if he were to rely on her power as a noble. She would control his whole life in that scenario, and our boy intends to climb up with his own abilities, so such arrangements will not work. Hearing this, Lilian simply points out how strange it is that he's so close to Ile even though he keeps claiming that he doesn't want to rely on nobles. At this point, the blondie starts to panic because the atmosphere suddenly becomes very tense. Luca responds to Lilian, revealing that he's close to Ile because the noble boy is a friend and someone he can entrust his life to win in battle, not because he's from the Karthika family. At this point, Lilian asks Luca if he really doesn't intend to give her a chance. Our boy takes a dramatic pause before answering and then confirms that he still isn't interested. He shoots up from his chair and hopes that she doesn't visit him again before storming out of the hall. On the way to his room, Ile stops him and tells him that he doesn't need to be so harsh, but Luca explains that she'd have just clung on if he wasn't that cold toward her. Ile agrees with him, but he also doesn't get why Luca dislikes the girl so much. After all, it wouldn't hurt if the both of them met up a few times. At this point, Luca reveals that he feels she's scheming. Lilian is approaching a nobody like him, because of the good things her dead brother Claude said about him. Hearing this, Ile just feels that Luca is scared because he doesn't know why she likes him. The blondie keeps trying to change his mind, but then all of a sudden, it becomes clear to Luca why the noble boy is interceding. It's because Ile likes Lilian. Luca accuses him of it, but he tries to deny it, wondering why he would think that. So, Luca explains that he could tell from his gaze and breath about how panicked he was just now. Archi's victima lets him see all sorts of things now, and emotions like these are some of them. Either way, he's still not interested, so he tells Ile to shoot his own shot instead and cut the bullshit if he likes the girl for real. Apparently, Ile really does have feelings for Lilian, but he can't act on them. He tries to say why it's impossible for him to make a move, but before he can, Luca disappears. Alright folks, here's a pretty long episode for you to cover a lot of chapters at once for this story. I personally really like this setting, so I'm gonna try and continue it for a while. If it's something you have taken a fancy to as well, definitely be sure to hit that like button and comment your thoughts down below. Until next time.